got some really cool things that my co-host John Brandt has worked on for this episode. It's really all about stoicism and the entrepreneurial mindset. And John, we've talked about this on previous episodes as far as embracing failure. And the first part of the notes that you created here that I'm looking at is utilizing failure as a learning opportunity. I think that's a great one to start off with and kind of get your feedback on that.
Yep. And pardon me, I'm actually supposed to be in Southern California, but I'm in rainy California. I'm out here, we're camped out here for the month. And what's interesting is we're getting these huge storms. So this is the second one in 2 weeks. So
yeah,
you
there's
hear
one
the rain pounding the roof. It's a little crazy. But yeah, to go through, just to set the table here for a talk about being stoic. It's important that when we do talk about being stoic, we talk about stoic. We say you got to stay in the middle. You can't get too high, too low. It's not a pessimistic view. It's really a positive view, because when you wait out the time of bad things happening, the good things happen, right? So the rain's pouring right now, and soon the sun will be shining. But it's wading through that and understanding, keeping an even keel when things are great. Of course, celebrate, enjoy the good things. Not saying just sit there and stare at the wall when good things are happening, but at the same time, don't get brought down by the negative. So when we start talking about accepting failure, and that's kind of the first thing, really talking about the Stoic view of failure is what I say importantly, and I repeat certain things that I talk about, but don't embrace failure. Accept it. It's a necessary evil. It's part of things that you need to do. I will tell you, in my earlier life, I didn't accept failure. I beat myself up for it. And I will tell you, if anything, it delayed some of the growth that I probably could have got to quicker. So I would tell anyone to navigate this in a little bit of a different way. Don't let the failure get to you. Understand that it's inevitable. Again, don't embrace it, because it's not something you want to repeat. When I say don't embrace it too, it also is important to understand why I say not to embrace it. Don't embrace failure. I know there's a lot of gurus out there say, love it, fail forward, which is great. But when I say don't embrace it, because there's a part of failure you don't want to repeat. And that part is making the same mistakes over and over again. Feedback, the best thing to get when you fail is to give yourself feedback and get an understanding what that feedback really means. So again, don't embrace failure, but accept it, and know it's there, and move on.
And I'm learning, because you really brought stoicism to my life recently, as we've been talking about all this. So I'm trying to learn a lot more about it as well. And one of the things that I see quite a bit in Stoic beliefs is also understanding that you focus on the things that you can control, not necessarily the things that you can't control. So,
right.
Some of those things that might have caused, failure in the past, or something that you might be doing, could be for reasons that are outside of your control. Right. And if you are able to focus on the things that strictly are under your control, you kind of have to let the other things kind of go off your back a little bit, realize that it might not be your fault, and just focus on the things that you can do to, prevent that failure, or like you said, take the notes on it and prevent it from happening again. That's something that you can completely control.
Yeah. And, I think it's important that we bring Stoicism to business and to being an entrepreneur, because, to me, there's no better way to live your life. So when we talk Stoic, it's about everything. It's about bad events happening to you personally, as well as, your business life. And it goes back to, Marcus Aurelius and all the Roman Empire. He was literally the leader of the Roman Empire when he was in I was going to say in office, but when he was in leadership, enrolling that particular empire. But yeah, you got to kind of look at, when you look at setbacks, you got to reframe them. You got to look at them as learning experiences, never to do again. You have to be really aware. And I will tell you from my own mistakes. This is the key to our podcast, is to talk about the mistakes that we've made and how we've got wisdom from them. And the mistakes that I've gone through was, the non-accepting of failure or thinking that was the end game, when it was only the beginning, when it was only a step forward. So, setbacks, reframe them, put them in a different way in your mind. There are ways to kind of reflect on when there is a failure. I used to, kind of sit back when I started really getting the understanding of going through things and you've said it before, we talk about it, that, there's only certain things we can control. The other stuff we can't control. So not being able to control the situation get you really frustrated. One thing, as a Stoic, you can control how you react to the stimuli that's going on out there, right? So things are falling apart, the economy's falling apart, but keeping your own head during any type of inflection or craziness or anything that's going on in the world, if you could keep your mind about you when everybody else is losing theirs. There's a great poem. I don't even remember it, but it said something like, "You will be a man, my son, when you're able to not lose your head when everyone around you is." Mm. And you really need to have that focused. And that poem was like years ago. Maybe in the next episode I'll pull it out and we'll read it.
Yeah.
But it is a very interesting poem. It was written like probably in the 1920s. I remember my dad actually reading it to me, and it was really interesting to keep your head when those around you have lost theirs.
Sure.
Yeah, that's being Stoic.
Yeah, and I mean, and a lot of the listeners that are listening to this now or in the future, may have stumbled across this podcast due to it being about Stoic wisdom and us talking about the wisdom that we've learned in our own lives, and obviously you being a very successful entrepreneur. But I mean, a big thing about Stoicism, it's a mindset, right? So a lot of the people that might have found this came over or might have found this because of looking at things from mindset, motivation, things like that. And Stoicism really is very interesting because as I've been studying it more and more as time is going on, I realized how much of a belief system it really, really is. Yeah. And it has helped me. And there's plenty of times when I get frustrated and I sit there and think, okay, I can't control what that guy on the road is doing and driving like a moron and all that. Yeah. But I'm starting to become more and more aware of that. And that's just something that happens, with growth and trying to just continuously improving, myself based off of this Stoic belief, which, is what you've already mentioned here and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah. And it's, it's a belief in, it's really a reaction, and it goes back to everything. It goes back to, people, in the Holocaust, when people were in prison camps, and how they had to maintain their mindset in order to one day be able to get out of there, where others did. I mean, you could go back. We talked about General Stockdale, who was a prisoner of war in Vietnam, and how his mindset and the way he led the people that were imprisoned with him. He was a general. He was imprisoned with his privates and all the rest of the people that looked up to him as a leader. And he was able to create a mindset and create a reaction that involved truth, the reality. You gotta, off the bat, you gotta understand reality. You can't fool yourself that nothing's going on the outside. Get the reality, and then get your inner wisdom set and understand that this is the direction I need to go. I need to ride through this, and then I need to learn from it. Past will tell you. Past will predict the future in a lot of cases. You don't look back on stuff that are meaningless. But what was that? The quote I said from George Washington: "We can't look back on the past unless it's to derive useful lessons." And a useful lesson in being stoic would be, a business of failure or what I did, or, a good one for me, a learning one was when I lost a business years ago, and I only had a few accounts and they went away. I realized that I could build a business, which was NHA, where there wasn't one customer that even gave us 1% of our business. So we could lose business, we could lose a customer here and there, and still never feel the, my goal was to build a business that I could feel comfortable with. It was a hard road to build a business that not one customer is 1% of your business is not an easy thing to do, but I was able to do it. And man, when it was over, that was a very, by the time I sold that company, it was a very comfortable business to run because I got rid of all the threats that could, I created a moat, right? I created a moat around the business where it was very hard to get competitors and very hard to lose if we lost customers. So,
and that was this essentially the way that you controlled it yourself. You couldn't control what these other schools would do and all that. And that's something that, these listeners that are coming in and listening to this, and we've noticed that a lot of the listeners that we have are quite younger than we are. Maybe coming into their first business or right out of college and so forth. And we have listeners, kind of from all over. But one of the big things is that what you did there was you were able to take the potential issues that you saw from maybe past experiences, like you had said, okay, the way that I can control this is by making sure that none of these schools, none of these businesses are going to equate for more than 1%. So if we lose them, we're going to be able to move on. And I think that's a good segue into the next section of what you put here, which is managing stress and uncertainty in your business, utilizing some of these principles. So kind of go into that a bit more and how you were able to do that and some of the philosophies here that help you with that.
Yeah. There's one interesting quote. It's like, good judgment, and wisdom come from experience, and experience comes from bad judgment. So, being smart and having wisdom really comes from mistakes and issues and failures and everything else. And in other words, you don't get there unless you go through the crap first.
Yeah.
So that's, to me, that's an interesting piece because that's part of it. Managing the uncertainty of it is really kind of, you need to, again, we talked about this, you need to embrace the ambiguous outcome. No, there are markers to show that you're going in the right direction, right? So you're moving forward, even though the future is not so clear. And we'll go back to General Stockdale. He would talk to his people that things aren't clear, but we're going to get out of this. We don't know when, we don't know how, but we're all dedicated that we're going to get out of this. And that's the way you need to feel about the business, is that, even though things are ambiguous, and maintaining an attitude that things will work out, things will come together. There will not be, and I truly believe, just like anything else, it's raining today. I know in 2 days the sun's going to shine. I got a nice tan. It was raining 2 weeks ago for days, but we knew. I mean, nowadays we have weathermen, so they tell us whether they're right or wrong. It's another bomb. Yeah. We don't have a forecaster, but we can forecast ourselves once you do it and you learn how to go through things, even when the weather is bad. I'm talking about metaphorically, the weather being bad, but even when things are shitting on you and the shit's hitting the fan, know that you will get out of that and you will move forward. And I wish I can give, I wish I could say to someone, here's your ultimate secret. But the ultimate secret is endurance. It's endurance. It's going through it. It's, listening to our podcast should certainly give people a feeling of, hey, you know what? That's interesting. I'm going through this tough time. I haven't figured it all out yet, but I will. I met a guy yesterday. My wife and I were out eating at the bar of a restaurant, and young guy sitting next to us was, wanted to start a company, and he just said, "Could you give me feedback, like where I don't make mistakes?" And I'm like, "That's not the way it works. I'm here to tell you you can make mistakes. I'm not here to tell you and make them. Don't don't embrace them, don't love them." But if you could create something without making a mistake, great. But don't be so nervous about making a mistake. You and I talked about this in past episodes, right? I think it was like episode 10 or so, where we talked about embracing, how the school systems and sometimes parents don't embrace people making mistakes, right?
Right.
It's a bad thing to make a mistake. And that's not true.
Yeah. And that's, in my day to day when I'm coaching the students that I work with their YouTube channels and so forth, that's something that I tell them too, is that you can spend all this time trying to make the perfect version of the video that you're trying to do and get everything right. The problem is that if you consistently focus on that and you don't move forward and, in this case, publish more content, publish more videos, you're not going to be able to get that data. You're not going to be able to understand that. You want to make those mistakes. You want to look at and then analyze which is great when you're, doing stuff with YouTube, is that you're able to look at the analytics. You're able to look at the spikes, the ups and downs, and you're able to see what caused a spike or what caused a dip.
Right.
And then fix those things as you move forward. But if you're not consistently doing that, and it is, like you said, an ambiguous path, if you don't know what the next step is, the biggest thing, the biggest goal that you can have is not trying to be perfect. The biggest goal for you would be, let me just consistently push this stuff out to get more and more data, to get more and more information, so I know what to focus on next time moving forward, as opposed to, what you're doing in the back end.
Yeah, you and I said this before. Perfection is kind of the enemy of success in a lot of ways because it can hold you back.
It holds a tremendous amount of people back. I see it all the time. I'm sure you have too, even with your VC stuff. I mean, you have to have seen people that are out there refuse to do certain things that they need to do because they're afraid that they're gonna mess up doing it, and that comes around as a cycle. It's not, it's confusing. It's a paradox that, understanding these things. I love the word paradox because paradox is like two clashing sentences, right? And when I go back to the road less travel, it was like, life is difficult, right? Right. That comment, life is difficult. And why is, and soon as then the other part of it is soon we acknowledge it, soon as we really ingrain it in us that life is difficult, life in a sense becomes easy. And that's that's really a Stoic philosophy, that it doesn't mean that you're just stoic, that you don't move and it's the fact that you can deal with things differently when you have an understanding. Knowledge is wisdom. Knowledge is the wisdom that you have, and going, oh, I've been through this storm before. I'm going to wait it out. I'm going to enjoy it. I'm going to do whatever I can to get through this storm. But when it's over, we're going to move forward. And, so acknowledging that the storm or life is difficult, and things are going to be difficult. We're always going to run into things that are difficult. Doesn't mean we're going to get more frustrated, because we're going to react to it differently. That's the key to Stoicism, is the reaction to the stuff. And if we could set people on a path of understanding that bad things happen to everyone, nothing is, mistakes are made. I'm still making mistakes. I mean, more than ever. But those are the things that I learned from and absorbed from, and realized that, this is inevitable. Which brings us to really the next point of your notes here is cultivating resilience and grit during some of those times and so forth. Yeah. So I'd like you to kind of expand on that, the Stoic beliefs and embracing those things and cultivating that.
Yeah.
that grit
Yeah.
that you sometimes need, especially as an entrepreneur in the beginning, or no matter what level you're at.
Yeah. We look at, you could look at histories of Stoics and what they've been through. Marcus Aurelius, who was a Roman leader, was a really intelligent thinker. He was one of the, kind of one of the first philosophers, probably the only philosopher that was ever a leader of an empire. And he wrote notes to himself, and his historical feedback was always about all the stuff he wrote. His feedback was always about like enduring the challenges of the day. He was a leader during the a huge pandemic outbreak where people died in Rome during the Roman Empire, and he oversaw. He went through something very similar we went through with COVID, probably much bigger, many more lives, people dying, and I believe he actually died from that. But when he led through the multiple years of this pandemic, he had the historical view of we will get through it. We will persevere. And the Roman Empire persevered until somebody ran it to the ground thousands of years later. But the obstacle's the way. We talk about it, right? Run through, not away from. Getting through the tough waters, navigating the ship. These are all examples of persistence. That's the kind of stuff that I love is navigating that stuff and making sure that, when I get out of it, I reflect on it, go back and look at it. So
it's similar to something that we tell my wife and I tell our daughters, and we heard this in a movie, it's based off of a true story called We Bought a Zoo with Matt Damon. And there's a part in it where he tells his son, and then it was also something that he had to do where it's just like 10 seconds of braveness. Right. And that was how he went up to go, meet his wife. And that was something that he told his son during the movie, is that you just need to be brave for 10 seconds. If you can get through those initial 10 seconds, you can move forward.
Yeah. No, that's a great example. I love that. Yeah.
And I tell that to my daughters all the time. It's just like, listen, when you're going through something, when there is an obstacle or when there is something that's concerning, all you need is to be that 10 seconds of braveness. And if you can do that and get through that, everything becomes easier. But the interesting thing that happens is that when you do that once or you do that twice, it doesn't require that 10 seconds of braveness like it did in the past. You start to realize, okay, you know what? I'm starting to build more resistance or more resilience. I'm starting to build more grit. I'm starting to toughen up on the outside. Yeah. And again, if you're concentrating on the things that you can control, you don't know what's going to happen. If you wanted to go up to the girl and, get your 10 seconds of braveness and go up and she turned you down, hey, it's not your fault. Right. I mean, if you went up to her and said something stupid, maybe then it is. But if you go up and you,
I've been a victim of that.
I'm sure we all have. But it's when you go up to do something and you build that perseverance and you build that kind of intestinal fortitude, it does become easier. Those obstacles, will always be in the way. And if you have this Stoic belief of like, hey, these things will happen. There's possibilities that this is going to turn out bad. But I'm going to control whatever I can. The outcome, I can't control the outcome. But I can be brave for those couple of seconds to actually do what I need to do to get the ball rolling, right? Yeah. Or to deal with this issue. You dealt with that with the sale of the last business. When you got that call, we were actually doing an episode, one of our first episodes, and you had to actually do it. You had to take the bull by the horns and say, okay, I can either just say, okay, this is over, or I'm going to go ahead and, by doing that, because you've dealt with it before, was able to really, save a big part of what happened with that sale and all that kind of stuff.
Yes, absolutely.
So, long-term perspective, enduring vision, the last little bit of notes that you have here and all that kind of stuff. What?
Well, I guess just some of the stuff, I think it's really important. Sustainable success really is about being consistent. So being sustainable, understanding your process and dealing with failure or mistakes or trip ups or, whatever, is you need to have a consistent process in your life and in your business. Because if you're going to be stoic, you got to be both. You got to be stoic for your business and for life. You can't be a stoic figure in your business and go home and a spider is walking across your bathroom and you jump and run and react to it, instead of going, all right, let's kill the spider, or, for those who don't want to kill the spider, let's catch it and set it free.
Yeah.
But ultimately, you need to have a practice of going through that process of dealing with stuff. And the word is, there's a couple words that go around that. One is definitely consistency. The other is, just really having confidence in yourself and discipline. Consistency is discipline in a lot of ways, and having that ability to be able to go through that. So, yes.
And it's a thing that I preach too. Consistency is what's going to, it's a goal that you can actually do yourself, being consistent, right? If your goal is to, to get as many sales as possible that you can per month, that's out of your control. But what's in your control is that you can do the things that are needed to, to make those and set those things up. Or if it's publishing content, it's okay. I'm not sure if I can, get myself 1 million fans or whatever it ends up being. But what I can do is I can consistently publish. I can consistently post. I can do this. I can do that. And what happens afterwards is out of my control. But if I'm doing the right steps, that's a goal that's also not only a lot easier to keep, but it's also going to keep you moving forward. It's going to keep you more resilient, because you're not going to get distracted or dejected as much if things don't happen the way that you wanted them to. But as long as you're dealing with your side of the goal, the thing that you can control, I think that's, is a huge thing. And that's really being consistent. Yeah. And you can find things that you control solely on yourself and do that consistently, whether it's working out, whether or not it's dieting or business. Just be consistent, and you're gonna find the success that you're hoping for. It kind of just becomes a byproduct of consistency.
It does. And I think, when we talk about great businesses or great things, they're all derived, or great story around your business, it's all derived around, some type of not great circumstance, right? So for me, National Health Careers Association, NHA, when I started that business, that was based around actually kind of a negative thing that happened to my grandmother in the hospital, right? So I took that and said, I want to be able to, create something that does better for patient care, set some regulations in the healthcare industry for allied healthcare professionals. Did the same thing in the behavioral health, really bad tragedy, losing my brother to suicide, which was just devastating to me. But I took that as a challenge to go and create something in the behavioral health space and literally create a business. And I'm not just saying it because I was the CEO of it, but I rather say it about the people that work for me. We save people's lives. I mean, change lives, save lives, for young children, K to 12. And that really came out of a tragedy. And, I'm so glad that business, I sold it recently, but I'm so glad that two of those businesses are doing amazing work, and that's my legacy. Those are the way I look at Stoic, the way Stoic, as a Stoic, the way you react to things, the way you are able to make, something, a mountain out of something that was a problem and created something. So to me, that's the most important thing about being a Stoic, is learning and building the community around you.
Right. And one of the last things I will kind of go over here, real quick is I'm looking at this one note that you put here: vision over immediate gratification. And really, that's what you're saying is looking at the issue that happened with your grandmother, the issue that happened with your brother, realizing that the vision was much bigger, and it was probably a lot easier to be more consistent and saying, okay, I'm not going to look for instant gratification here, which is something that we all nowadays, kind of look for, with everything. We want this instant gratification, and your goal moving forward was the vision is so much stronger than what the gratification will come as long as you're being consistent. And I think that's a really good lesson for people listening to this is, remember your vision, remember and think about the things that you can control. How you react to them is going to be huge. And you don't need the instant gratification for things to appear that they're working or not. That's that ambiguous path. Is that as long as you are being consistent, as long as you are moving forward and understanding that, hey, there's going to be ups, there's going to be downs, there's going to be ebbs, there's going to be flows, there's iterations that you might need to make, there's nuances that are going to happen in the business or whatever it might be. If you consistently move forward, mistakes will happen.
And learn from those mistakes. Right. Learn from those mistakes that you're moving forward from something, but you're learning from that. And that's the beauty. And, and everybody goes, I want a business that's financially going to pay me. You do all the right things, that stuff comes, right? That the financial, but what about building a business that can enrich the community, enrich the world? And that's the kind of stuff that, that's
absolutely great. Well, I think we pretty much reached the end. I think this was a great episode. Really good information there. For any of you that watch this that have questions regarding this, please feel free to reach out to us on any of our social media profiles. Let us know. This will also be up on YouTube eventually, so please feel free to leave comments there and reach out to us on our website too, underdogwisdom.com. Thanks so much for listening.
And Spotify and Apple Podcasts and all the other.
Yeah, we're
on everywhere.
Yeah, we'll be everywhere at one point for sure. So with that, thanks for your time today, Jon. We will see you guys on the next episode. Have a great one.